lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, everybody. Welcome to episode number 146 of Sports Cards Live. It is Wednesday night, June the 22nd, 2022, and my name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank Scott Maxwell and Greg Harrison from Tag Grading for joining last Saturday. And a heads up to everybody, the fifth and final episode of the Reveal series will be on Saturday, July the 9th. This Saturday coming up on Sports Cards Live, our guest will be Nate Ballant, also known as In Cardboard Veritas. Looking forward to having Nate on the show on Saturday. I would like to shout out the Center Stage app. Download the app in the App Store for quick comps, whether you are strolling through card shows or pricing your cards. If you are a vendor, the app is continuously improving. So please join me in supporting these hobbypreneurs as they endeavor to make the hobby better than it already is. I would also like to shout out channel sponsor Pristine Auction. PristineAuction.com is one of the most trusted sports memorabilia and collectibles auction sites. Auctions on PristineAuction.com start at just $1 each day, and there are thousands of autographed items available. They also sell thousands of sports cards, starting with no reserves in their weekly sports card auction, which runs Sunday to Sunday and has everything from vintage to ultra modern, including raw and graded singles and wax. Head over to pristineauction.com. Use code SCL when you register to get $10 off your first purchase. And I would also like to shout out the hobby's middleman service, TradeSafe, your risk-free alternative for trades and buy-sells from any peer-to-peer social media platform or marketplace. TradeSafe has created a service, a process, and a team that makes remote dealing much safer than ever before. Is now fully digital, and the website was completely relaunched. It's easier to use than ever. Check out tradesafehub.com. As always, I do want to thank all you subscribers, viewers, podcast listeners. If you are not yet subscribed, please take a moment and do so. And as always tonight, your questions, your comments are in play. And I must say, it's kind of fun to do a Wednesday episode. When Sports Cards Live first launched in April of 2020, I was doing Wednesday and Saturday episodes for almost a year, and then stopped the Wednesdays. But here we are with a special Wednesday episode, and I'm happy to have tonight's guest with us. He started out in the hobby in 1992 at the age of 5, filling out binder pages with Chicago Bulls cards. Fast forward, he started his consignment business early in the pandemic and quickly made a name for himself as a trustworthy seller. He recently halted that business for reasons we will get into soon, and then he has accepted a position with PWCC as a sales rep. His favorite athletes are Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, Jerry Rice, and Michael Jordan. His favorite teams are the Denver Nuggets and the Washington Commanders. Originally from and currently hailing in Quincy, Illinois. Let's bring him out. Nic Frericks, welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you doing tonight?
Man, I'm good. I'm juiced after that intro. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to having you. And when you told me that you were a Washington Commanders fan, I had to double check my brain and be sure what sport is he talking about. I figured it out. Obviously, how are you getting as a fan? How are you getting used to that name change?
It's still hard. I have to remind myself the name every time I say it. I usually say Washington fan. It's easier, especially in the last 3 years. They've had 3 different names. So I just go with Washington, but it's an adjustment. And, thankfully there's not many of us, so you don't have many people struggling with that problem right now.
Well, yeah, I liked the Washington Football Club. I was getting used to that. I thought it made sense. I was actually surprised that they went and added a true nickname. Were you expecting them to? Where did you think they were going to go with that?
So it's funny because I follow a lot of the beat writers and the social media pages that cover the Washington Commanders. And it was funny because they polled the fans of these pages, and the fans always voted in favor of keeping Washington Football Team. So being the Washington fan that I knew that what the fans wanted wouldn't actually happen. So that's when I knew that they would go with a nickname. But it was funny because different things got leaked by different people. So it was, you never really knew what name it was, but I'm just glad we have a name that I think will be around for a long time.
And you're okay with it? The Commanders, you like it?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. It's going to be hard to adjust because I became a fan with my grandpa back in the day. So it was, it was Redskins. Just that was the team. I understand the changes, but I support the Washington Commanders.
Yeah. Good stuff. In due course, you will get used to it and not think twice, right? Just kind of
Absolutely.
the way it goes. So, as mentioned in the intro, you are now with PWCC, but we actually scheduled this episode before I knew you had taken that position. We were already planning for you to come on the show. And then you said, hey, by the way, I'm taking, I'm going to make it public soon. I'm going to be taking this role with PWCC. It's a big change in your life, obviously. What I want to know is, how's your family responding to this change in your journey as as far as your career goes?
Yeah, no, it was a big adjustment at home for sure. And my family is a big reason why I made the change. And it's been really great, to be honest. I got some downtime in between, shutting down consignments and transitioning to the PWCC position. And I'm working from home currently. So I don't think anybody's as excited as my 3-year-old daughter that can pop in and give me a hug whenever she wants. And I can't deny that I like that a lot too. So it's been pretty good.
Yeah, I guess the whole shift in the way that the workplace is moving towards remote for lots of people has that benefit of, I think, a lot of parents spending more time with their kids, their young kids especially. So good. I'm glad to hear it. Glad to hear that it's got the benefits that you hope to get out of it. Let's go through your hobby history a little bit. You started as a kid in the 90s. And when I did the intro, I skipped from, your fill and binder pages in 92 all the way till really 2020. I basically fast forwarded past 28 years. Can you take a few minutes and just fill us in? Like, what has your hobby activity been between, getting involved in the age of 5 right through until you started the Wharf Sports Cards in 2020 or so?
Yeah, no, it's been a fun journey. Growing up in the 90s in Illinois, a basketball player myself, it was, you had to be a Bulls fan. And I was lucky to grow up as a kid and a card collector during that Bulls dynasty with Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman and everybody else. So really, my journey early on was never really about chasing super rare, hard to find cards. It was more about just getting as many Bulls cards as I could. Obviously always targeted Michael Jordan first, but I was just buying packs with whatever money I could. I would get $20 here and there to water the neighbors' flowers when they would go out of town. And, all of that money went to the LCS that we had at the time. And, it went to packs, and those packs went straight into binders. And it's funny, I still have those binders, and every now and then you pull them out and you're like, should I do something with these? And it's like, no, I'm just going to look at them, and it's going to take me back to those days and how I felt during those days. And then I'll put them away and do it again in a year. So that was the early stages. And then I have a similar story to a lot of people. I kind of got more interested in girls and sports as I got into high school and in college, and played basketball in college. And eventually, had enough income to sort of get back into, things I couldn't get into in cards when I was younger. That was probably around probably 2012 was the first time I kind of came back in. And as a Redskins fan, if you guys don't remember, that was RG3's rookie year, which was an electrifying year for Redskins fans for that season, at least until he went down. But luckily I was too poor to afford RG3 cards at that time. So I was buying other players, but I was kind of in and out for the next few years, always kind of monitoring, but not really, didn't really have a direction in the hobby at that time. And then in 2017, I came back, again, full time, and was kind of buying. So in 2017, I had been coaching high school basketball for a little bit and had the opportunity to coach against some of these prospects that ended up in the NBA. So the first card I bought when I got back in 2017 was a Harry Giles Silver Prism rookie card, because I coached in a tournament that he was in, and his stuff was super cheap. And then that got the ball rolling, and I never looked back. So.
And then you decide to start the Wharf Sports Cards. We're gonna get into that in a couple of seconds here. I have a bunch of questions on that, but quick hello. We have a few people in the chat. Jeff McMahon, what's going on? Yeah, very rare Wednesday show for Sports Cards Live. I think back in the day when I used to do this regularly, people knew it was Wednesday, Saturday. So it's a bit of a shocker tonight for sure. Paul, what's going on? Hello to you. Rich, great to see you. Troy's Collectibles, good to see you as well, guys. Thanks for joining. So here's what I want to do next. I want to talk about the name of your business, the Wharf, or your old business now, the Wharf Sports Cards. One of the things I love about doing this show is that I get to know people so much better, and more so than just by your Instagram persona or your Twitter account. I really want to get to know people, and I want the audience to get to know the people too. I think that's kind of one of the things I bring to the hobby, and I really enjoy doing that. So I want to get into that because I do know the story, but I want you to share it. Tell us a bit about your father and the name of the business, the Wharf Sports Cards.
Yeah, no, I love the story. So the Wharf Sports Cards, the Wharf specifically, it comes from my dad. So my dad passed away right before I turned 2 years old, and I had an older sister, an older brother, and actually a younger sister. At that time, my dad owned a monument company. He was a business owner himself, always had dreams of owning his own business and eventually starting his own business. But when he passed away, it was he had a business that my mom helped him with, and it was just my mom with 4 kids under the age of 6 and a business to figure out. So I grew up without my dad, but I always kind of still looked up to him and wanted to be like him, and always wanted to make him proud, and it quickly became, my number one goal, or the thing I looked forward to the most as a kid, was being a dad. It wasn't the normal things kids look up to. It was, I couldn't wait to be a dad, to have those relationships, at least from the dad perspective, that I didn't get, as a kid. So fast forward, 2020, right around when I had my daughter, actually, my mom was in town, and I was helping her clean out a storage unit, and I came across this wooden sign, and it said the Wharf on it. And it's actually hung up in the office. I meant to bring that, but I asked her what that sign was about, and I remember kind of seeing the sign randomly a while back, but didn't know the story. And she said my dad made that sign because it was his kind of pipe dream to open up a restaurant on this lake that they always went to, and he wanted to call it the Wharf. And that was the sign he made to sort of, remind himself that was kind of his dream. So when I found that sign, I knew right away, like, that's going to be something important to me. And, a few months later, I had this opportunity to start this brand and this business, and never thought twice about what the name would be. So a lot of meaning behind the Wharf and the Wharf Sports Cards.
I want to ask, so, I want to tell, I guess, when I first realized that the Wharf Sports Cards, the Instagram account, was now a consignment company, I wondered, where do you get the name the Wharf from? Like, why the Wharf? I'm sure a lot of people come up with, they have assumptions and theories, and it's not like it's that out there of a name. It seems like a regional sort of name, that kind of thing. But I wondered, and it's just really cool to now understand the full reason why that your dad wanted to open a restaurant called the Wharf, and now that's what you decided to call your consignment business. What was the the next question I do have is like the opportunity to start this business. How did you identify the opportunity? What was going on in the world at the time, or in the hobby, and in your personal life, that allowed you to start this business?
Yeah. So, a lot of things aligned at the right time. But so March 2020, when COVID kind of really hit, I was teaching and coaching high school basketball at a public school around here, a very low income public school. But I had been coaching and teaching high school for 7, 8 years at that point. And I'd been sort of buying and selling cards on the side, a little bit of collecting and a little bit to sort of just have some extra income. So there was a little bit of both there. And I'd been talking to my wife for probably a year at that point, just kind of hinting like, I think I can do something with this full time at some point. The goal was really another year from then to be able to make that move. But when COVID hit, as teachers, we were sent home, and schools were shut down, and we didn't go back. So from March through August, I was paid as a teacher and never worked a day in that role again. So I really just poured everything into cards in that time, and decided pretty quickly, a month or two into that I was just not going to go back to teaching and coaching. I think I can make this thing work. So, I think that's when I started my Instagram page as well, was around March or April at that time. And, I never had the goal of starting a consignment service. I just wanted to get deeper in the hobby and build relationships and get to know people and just make connections and see what happened. It was never about making money, and it was never about finding a service that the hobby needed. It was just, how can I have fun with this and make a full-time income doing it? And then, so obviously that led me into transacting a lot, and some of that was on eBay, some of that was elsewhere, but I saw opportunities. I saw gaps in the consignment services that were offered at the time. And just having built those relationships with people in the hobby, I felt like I had a good idea of what those gaps were and what collectors really wanted in a consignment service that I thought I could offer. And frankly, the two biggest things were speed and communication at that point. At that point, there was not a consignment service on eBay that said, we will guarantee your cards will be listed in this time frame. I brought that to the table with a 3-day guarantee. And then we built out a system that basically shared and tracked and communicated above and beyond the entire, process of a consignment. So that's the foundation of it, was built on relationships and trust, speed, and communication. And then it kind of just snowballed and rolled from there. It really turned into something bigger than I thought it would, faster than I thought it would. But I knew there was the opportunity.
Did you have a staff?
Yeah. So at the time, when I made that announcement, I think it's been at least 2 months now, maybe over 2 months. I had 2 full-time employees and a part-time employee, and myself. I gave them much more of a heads up than that. But yeah, I did have 3 employees.
Yeah, just you had a full business going, and all because of the pandemic and being a teacher, not being able to work, right?
And this legitimately did start in my basement. At that time, in March 2020, I was living with my wife and my daughter, that was 1 at the time, in a 900 square foot house with a 400 square foot basement. And that's where this whole thing started. We quickly moved into a better house, and then I eventually moved into an office. But yeah, it was one of those COVID startups.
So let's now look back. Obviously, as I know, and I'm sure some viewers don't know, but all your followers on Instagram know that you've now closed the business. You are no longer doing consignment sales under the Wharf Sports Cards banner. So a few questions about that. The first one I want to ask you has to do with your father, and and this is a loaded question, just so the audience knows. I'm teeing this one up for you because we had this conversation. I want you to share it. But how did your father's death, when you were almost 2 years old, impact your decision to close up the business?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, you know, him dying that young, right before I was 2, I essentially don't have memories of my dad. So I had a different perspective on everything than a typical kid in a normal family would have. So, as I got older, and I said earlier, I always wanted to be a dad. So when I when I became a dad 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, I knew that those moments, all of those moments mattered a lot. And it's a tricky position because as a dad, my wife stays home as well. That was important to us. And so you're kind of expected as a dad to be the breadwinner, make enough money to support everybody, but also be there. And that's not always easy to do all of those things well. And I quickly found myself pouring a lot of my time and energy into the business because it needed it at the time. And the idea was that at the end of a certain timeline, it would really pay off for the family and we would get some of that time back. But it was getting to that threshold where, I wasn't willing to sacrifice those moments with my wife and my daughter that I'll never get back for something that I could potentially do later in life or any other time of my life if I want to. And then, we can get into the details of PWCC later, but when an opportunity like the PWCC opportunity presented itself and it was going to allow me to stay in the space, have those relationships I still have and build more of, but also get some of that flexibility back in my day, it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. Okay. No, makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing your, it's really your personal story with myself and the audience. It's interesting. And it just, it just goes to show that there's so much more behind the Instagram accounts, the Twitter accounts, the names on Facebook. There's so much more to the people than you really can ever imagine knowing just from following them on social media. So thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
Looking back on the Wharf Sports Cards consignment business, what did you learn from the business that you weren't expecting to learn when you went into it?
So many things, but really what I like to keep it simple, but to shed some light is just how much time it takes to build something impactful at all, but especially in a space like this, and how important using your time efficiently is, because you can quickly waste time and fall behind quickly in a business in this space. So like just the overall impact and value of time, I learned so much about. And, on the other side of that is like I touched on how valuable time is, since I was giving so much of it up and sacrificing some time with my family, I learned the value there, but also like within the actual service itself, it was a time giving service. I was giving people their time back to take care of listing cards, shipping cards, selling cards, handling messages. They were getting time back and I was doing that service for them. So I could see how much more those people could do with that time as well. So really just the overall impact of time and value of time on everything in the ecosystem.
Let me throw this at you. Did you learn anything about other hobbyists, like in generally speaking? Did you learn anything about the expectations that your clients had on a consignment service? Did you learn anything about any collectors that you thought that might have like opened your eyes to a certain approach to the hobby? Speak to those sorts of things if you can.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there. So in terms of the expectations and stuff within the hobby, this is something I've had some conversations with before, and I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but expectations across the board are pretty high for people in this space, participants in this space. And I think it's mostly a really good thing because, when you're talking about things like deliverables, like, processing my consignment quickly, shipping my cards out quickly, paying me out quickly, like you should have high expectations on stuff like that. But sort of on your point earlier, about what's behind the Instagram name and stuff like that, like not knowing the person behind the Instagram name, like you're almost always dealing with people. Obviously, you're almost always dealing with people that have a lot of other responsibilities, families, kids, and the impact that certain expectations can have on someone with those responsibilities and trying to juggle everything and all that stuff. So the expectations are high in this hobby, but I also think that's why so much competition has come out of the woodworks to try to fulfill those expectations that seem to be not always met in a lot of areas. But in terms of collecting like actual, segments of the hobby, I learned a lot. So it's weird because I learned the hobby was bigger than I thought, but smaller at the same time. So I think there's way more people than I thought that really participate in this hobby at all levels. Like, and then I learned that again at PWCC because I had this eBay system of people that I worked with frequently, whether it was buyers or sellers. But then I get to PWCC and there's a huge list of people I've never heard of, so it's like the hobby is huge, but within the hobby, there's these pockets that people sort of gravitate towards. And there's not a lot of those pockets. There's, generally speaking, a lot of collectors want the same type of stuff. They want rare stuff. They want scarce stuff of the things that they cared about. But it's just, there's a lot of different collectors out there, but there's still small spaces within that big space. So,
well, that's an amazing insight. I'm glad I asked you that question. I think it's really interesting.
It's cool. And it's like, my perspective on it changes every day, it seems like, because I meet this whole new pocket of people or this whole group of collectors that I didn't even know existed. So It's an encouraging thing.
When you were talking about the sort of the expectations of clients, and you said expectations are high, my mind went straight to Robert California, and I think season 8 or 9 of The Office. I don't know if anyone knows that reference, but expectations are high, and they just put the fear of God into the whole office that they had to double their sales goal or something like that.
Yes, I love it.
How have your clients responded now? I mean, listen, you gave some heads up to people, but how were your clients just like your consignment clients versus your eBay purchasers?
Mm-hmm.
How did they respond? Was there a lot of disappointment that you were?
I'd say so I did give a lot of heads up. I think I made the actual announcement. So what I did was, when I knew I was going to at least halt consignments, I reached out to all of my repeat consigners and let them know, like, hey, I'm going to make a really big announcement pretty soon that's going to impact future consignments, and just really personally thank them all for all their support and giving me the opportunity and showing the ongoing support. But then I made that announcement, I think 8 weeks before I actually was going to stop consignment. So I did give a pretty good heads up there. And everyone was supportive because I shared, generally the reasons why. It was just generally to get more time and energy back for my family, not just time. Like, I was home every night and saw my daughter and wife every night, but like, I was drained, I was drained, and I was constantly thinking of what I needed to do the next day and what I might not have gotten to that day. and mentally that takes a toll. And you know, you can be there physically, but if you're not present, if you're not there mentally, like, you might as well not be there. So that's really, I got to that point where you know, I was there, but I was thinking about work too much. So they all respected that reason. They all appreciated that reason. They all wished me the best. But they were disappointed because they frankly liked the service and appreciated the love I gave to, you know, every customer and how I treated them. So, it was a mixture of both. Ton of support, a little bit of disappointment, and then a lot of questions on, well, what's next?
For sure. What advice, actually, before I ask the question, if Richard Zangrillo was in here earlier in the chat, if he's still here, I asked this question with people like him in mind. What advice would you give somebody who's looking to start a consignment business, you know, here in June, July of 2022?
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm sorry. Before you get into it, Nick, let me just say the reason why I shout out Richard Zangrillo is because he started a consignment business, I think, right around the time you stopped or, you know, ramped it up, called LBBK Collectibles. So a little shout out for him there. But curious, you know, what advice would you give him and others who are looking to do something like this?
yeah, I think, you know, just the advice I would give would be, you know, upfront, know what you're willing to risk. And that means financially, that means time, that means relationships, health, stress. Know what you're willing to risk and what the cost of that risk could be before you make any type of commitment to starting it. Just reflection, really. Like, you know, I think a lot of us can see, like, oh, there's opportunity to make money here, and then we just chase it, rather than thinking of, like, okay, what are all the impacts this is going to have on every part of my life, and am I willing to risk those things? And if you are, then you can take that next step. But you also have to understand what those risks can do to those segments of your life. So, you know, I think it's important to take the time to reflect on those things. And I think within this space, like, especially, you know, I think with any business in this space, but, you know, specifically talking about consignments, if you take care of the collectors, if you put the collectors first, you will always have a customer. I think that's a simple thing that a lot of businesses that come into this space miss. They don't prioritize the collector first. They prioritize the deeper pockets first, and those will come and go. But the collectors have been here for decades, and they're going to be here for decades. They're not going anywhere. So I think that's extremely underrated. It's simple and it's important. And then it's specifically with consignments, I would say two more things. I would say, know, you know, what your competition is, what collectors wants, and find the gaps. There's gaps everywhere. In every business, even the most amazing businesses, there's a gap that can be filled. How can you fill it? Is it worth your time and effort to fill it? Can it be profitable enough if you do fill that gap? And then it leads me into my next thing is have a plan to build that out. And that sounds simple, but that should be really elaborate. And you know, a business plan is helpful when you're talking about intervals of timelines, whether it's a 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan, or different intervals. But you should have an idea of, you know, this is the idea. This is how I think we can get it going. This is what I'm hoping will happen at this time. If this does happen, we can go pursue this. If this doesn't happen, we need to reevaluate this, and just keep that flowing. But to be able to map that out and to be able to reflect and evaluate at those intervals is also extremely important. And curveballs will also come in within those timeframes, so you have to be able to adjust at the same time. So that was a lot, but you know, that covers most of the important things, specifically in this space.
Yeah, that's great advice all the way through. And I think at the end, what I heard was, you know, you got to be nimble to handle all these curveballs that are coming. And you mentioned putting the the collectors first. You didn't say customers. You said put the collectors first. Was that deliberate?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I think we're finally really starting to see, and, that can go into the state of the hobby talks. Like, we're starting to see that collectors have sort of been right this whole like weird wave we've been in the last 2-3 years, through COVID, that we're starting to see that collectors were right the whole time on specifically on what cards would be important, but also what things would be important in this hobby, and like what businesses would last, and all that good stuff. Like, you know, they haven't gone anywhere. We've seen people come in and out over the last 3 years, but collectors haven't gone anywhere. They might have, hidden their, man cave for a little bit with all the noise, but they were still collecting, So I think collectors should be your focus, because then you always will have a customer.
Yeah, I hear you. That makes a lot of sense, and it aligns with something. Whenever I'm talking to any company in the hobby, if they are interested in what I have to say, I always say if you put the hobby first, if you think hobby first, I think it'll lead you to making the right decisions for the business. If you don't put hobby first, you might not make the right decision. So a couple of questions did come in here, Nic. Lucky K was asking, when you decided to close because you were just too busy, was it not viable to hire somebody else or even sell the business? Did you entertain those two possibilities?
Yeah, great question. So, that was a very important detail I left out. So really this whole, halting the business conversation had started with my wife and myself. Honestly, probably the beginning of this year. And at that time, I had just brought in my second full-time employee. Both of my employees were awesome. They worked their butts off. They wanted to learn more. They never had issues with any of them at all. They were rock stars. And my part-timer as well. He wasn't there as frequently, but he was awesome. So it got to a point where, my employees were kind of burning out because there was a lot on their plate. And one of them particularly was from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm in Quincy, Illinois. It was his first time away from his family. He has, an incredible family that he's really close to. And, it was a combination of burning out and missing family, and actually having some really good opportunities back home to pursue as well. And we were at a point where I was interviewing to hire a third full-time person. And he was at a point where he was just wanting to pursue other things, which he should have at that point. So it really came down to, not only did we already need another person, I was going to have to replace this guy that was frankly worth two good people. Like he was just a really good employee. And then I would have to, carry that slack while hiring, train these new people. We were actually ready to sign on to build out this new elaborate website that was going to be a big financial investment, but would have been incredible. So it was kind of at a point where it's like, all right, I'm either all in for the next 2 years because of what I'm about to do, or now's my last chance to take a step back and reevaluate. So that's where it was. And in terms of selling the business, so I still own the Wharf Sports Cards business. It is still an LLC, but I can't take consignments because it's a conflict with my current job. But the brand, the Wharf, just means so much to me that I wanted to keep that, just to have the option of doing anything I want with it at any point, if it comes to it. So that was more valuable to me than selling it and not knowing how that name would be, represented moving forward.
And then if you're just joining us a little bit late, Nic did go into detail earlier on as to why that name is so important to him. So feel free to rewind later or come back and watch that again. A couple more questions. Skeppy says, how did you secure and insure holding clients' cards?
Yeah, that was something that like I made myself figure out immediately because it kept me up at night, like not, before I ever started, like, how am I going to sleep at night knowing I have these valuable things of other people's that who knows what could, what the possibilities are. So securing them, like we had an office it was kind of a nice setup. It was an office within a building, like it was like in the middle of a building. So there was like the layers of the building that you had to get through to get to the office, which was a good space, but it was like secured on the outside of the building, secured to get into the office, cameras everywhere. We had 2 big vaults within like a locked room that secured everything. So it was as secure as we could get it at the time. And insurance, like we had actually a couple different policies on everything just to make sure we were kind of triple covered on everything. I actually was lucky enough to make a connection with one of my employees. His dad has a ton of businesses and has some really good connections with some people that work with some really big clients in insurance. So I got lucky networking there. And one of the things I thought I was lucky and fortunate enough to do really well was I knew everybody's stuff was secured and insured, because otherwise I would have never been able to sleep.
Yeah, no, I hear that for sure. Okay, and then Crypto Collects has 2 questions. Did you have a timeline for operations initially when you first started, and any chance you could come back to Consign in the future?
Yeah, I think so. Initially, when I started in March, it was one of those things where it's like, what, I knew this part, it was built into my business plan. I gave myself a year to hit certain thresholds. We hit those pretty quickly, probably 6 months in, sort of reevaluated and said, at 3 years, we need to be at these thresholds, and I need to, time was built into that plan. I knew within this plan, and this was with discussions with my wife, like I didn't want to be working 80 hours a week for the next 10 years. Right. So the 3-year plan was really profit and sales thresholds, but what were my days looking like? How much responsibility did I have? And, what was the outlook on those things? And, we were crushing sales numbers, like way ahead of schedule on sales numbers, but the time and stress levels were at an all-time high to where it kind of tipped it over the edge. So the timelines were there, and we were ahead of schedule on all the timelines. And I think the website stuff we were going to do was going to be really cool, and could have really, I think it really would have taken us to the next level in the eBay consignment space. But again, it's just something I had to weigh with what I was going to give up elsewhere. And, coming back to consign, it's not a plan I have, it's sort of built into why I took the PWCC position is I can do a lot of that still. I still get to interact with collectors, and, now I actually have time to hop on the phone with these people and have real conversations and really get into what they need and want in a service like PWCC. But I don't have the time commitment of the operational stuff, right? I don't have the intake cards. I don't have to, clean up trackers. I don't have to ship stuff out and keep all that organized. So I'm able to sort of get the best of both worlds with this new position.
All right, let's change gears. Let's talk about your role with PWCC. And I think my biggest question really is like, how did the opportunity come about to present itself, and how long did it take you to decide to take that opportunity?
Yeah, so when I made that announcement on Instagram, I had a lot of people reach out. A lot of, I did have a lot of inquiries about buying the business, partnering, opportunities to help give me some time back, but keep me involved. But then, I have some relationships at PWCC that reached out also at the same time, and offered this opportunity to essentially, like I said, do, it's the title is sales rep, but really I'm talking to collectors and servicing their needs within the ecosystem of cards, buying, selling, capital programs, whatever it is, like just finding out how can I help you get cards into your collection through PWCC. So they were offering an opportunity to stay in the space, to, maintain my lifestyle with the salary and potential commission opportunities, but give me back that time and flexibility I was looking for. So it was really checking all three of the boxes that were most important to me.
When did you actually start with them?
So my first date was last Monday was my start date. So it's been about
Not even a week.
Not even, yeah. It's
Not
been
even a week and a half. Like
a week and a half. I knew I was going to, I think I accepted the position 1st of June, probably. So there was like a good month in between stopping consignments and starting with PWCC, but in the middle there, I knew I was going to do it. So, the opportunity came up 2 months ago, and had a lot of conversations with my wife, and decided a month ago, and hit the ground running, and it's been really good so far. I'm glad I made the decision.
Yeah, my next question was going to be, how do you like it so far? What do you like about it? I understand what you like in terms of lifestyle, but just speak a little bit about is there anything that you, in your week and a half, that has almost really surprised you? Anything that you weren't expecting? Anything that you were that was even better or worse? Anything you can say, just to give us some insights into as you've been onboarded there.
Yeah, I think a few things we touched on that stuck out was just initially it was the amount of users on the platform that I've never heard of, which is a great thing. That means there's more people in this thing than we know of, and there's more people on that platform than I would have guessed, like by far. And that was probably me being oblivious, just having an eBay consignment and not being so wrapped up in that world that I didn't know how big of a platform PWCC is and how many users are on that platform. So that was a pleasant surprise. My favorite part by far has just been being able to hop on the phone and just literally just say, like, hey, what do you collect, and why do you collect that, and seeing if there's ways that we can help fuel your collecting desires, whether that's finding cards that are hard to find in the vault, or selling cards to pay for other cards that you want more, or the capital program, which is, is an opportunity to leverage your cards to generate capital quick to put towards other cards. There's so many cool services that PWCC offers that I didn't know about, that really can fuel the ecosystem of the hobby in ways that I haven't seen elsewhere. So I'm really excited to be able to offer those and see how I can put collectors first in this role, right? I made my first private deal today, which was a big stepping stone moment for me. But
congrats.
Thank you. And the card went into the hands of a collector, and that just felt good. Like in the conversations, and it's actually somebody I've known, so I knew who they were. I knew that they were a collector. I knew it's a card that was going to get in their collection and stay there for a while. So like when you can make that happen, and it actually came from, I made an Instagram post just saying, like, hey, there's so many incredible cards in the vault that nobody has any idea about. If you're looking for something in your collection, let me know. It came from that Instagram post, and I was able to get a card, a rare, important card into a player collector's collection, and everybody won. And I'm like, if I can do that every day, like, why wouldn't I do this?
The power of social media. I mean, you do one post and it moves a card into a collection, put some potentially, I don't know how your comms say, but potentially put some commission in your pocket, and keeps the ecosystem churning, as you said.
Exactly. And also within that post, I just learned quickly how many different types of collectors there are out there, and not, you know, like whether they're collecting certain players or certain sets or what, and you get to start those conversations on, you know, why they collect those things, and it's just fun to hear those stories, man, and build those relationships.
All right, cool. Appreciate you kind of filling us in on this next step in your hobby and career and life journey, for that matter.
Yeah.
Back to you though, as a individual within our hobby, what do you collect for yourself now besides putting Bulls cards into binder pages?
Yeah, those days are over for now. But man, like this part makes me smile because I really evolved into like pure collecting now. You know, now that I've been able to get myself into a position in the hobby to make money on my job in the hobby, I can just focus on collecting, you know, to collect and not worry so much about, you know, buying cards to make money. Yes, we all want to buy cards that hopefully appreciate, but like I'm just diving into the pure joy of collecting right now. So I collect, I actively collect right now Jerry Rice. Like Jerry Rice is my go-to guy. I've got some stuff with me here.
While you're pulling them, I just want to go to a couple of quick comments, Nick. Terry Fortune says the Game 4 in the Stanley Cup Final is going to overtime.
Oh man.
And if you've noticed my eyes going down here, it's because I've literally got the score sitting in front of me so I can keep tabs on that game. But thank you, Terry. And Joe Perot, evening, gents. Love my PWCC vault. Good to see you. Joe tried to what's it called? Facebook Messenger video call me like 10 minutes ago, and I had to while I'm looking at the score in the game, I reject, and I just text him back. I go, I'm live. Oh shit, sorry. Anyway, Joe, glad you joined us here. Anyway, okay, sorry to interrupt. Please, let's see some of your cards.
Yeah, so I'm really focused on 90s Jerry Rice inserts and parallels. This is my personal favorite, and again, it's not the most valuable card I own, it's just my personal favorite, but I love the 97 EX Essential Credentials football, numbered out of 100. This one's 42 out of 100. It's hard to see that serial number, but you know, this kind of is a reason why I love football cards. The football card in the EX 2000, the only parallel was the Essential Credentials out of 100. There's not the two parallels. There's not the credentials and the essential credentials like basketball and baseball, right? So this Essential Credentials is the only parallel of the set, of the original base set, and it's numbered out of 100. The design is unique too. Like if you've seen basketball, they don't have like the sparkle star border. The cloud design is a little different. So I really like the design and you know, sort of extra added layer of scarcity in that set. I got the 99 Essential Credentials Future as well. Love that card. I'd love to get the now, but those are just so tough to come by.
What's the Future numbered to?
It's 67. So that's
pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. It's kind of in the middle there of some of those serial numbers.
So that means that the now would be numbered to like 30 something in there, maybe, or
yeah,
less.
I think it's 24. I want to say
24? Okay.
I think it's 24. And then I'd love to add the 98 to that set, the pink and like purple designed one. So love Jerry Rice. And I dabble with some other guys in 90s.
Dabble with the green PMG.
Yeah, but it is a green PMG. Beautiful card. It's Isaac Bruce. So cool. I live 2 hours from St. Louis, and so I, was a big fan of the early 2000s Greatest Show on Turf St. Louis Rams. Got the Marshall Falk. It's not in a Rams uniform, but it's the Rubies out of 50. Those in hand are beautiful cards. So really active with Jerry Rice mostly, and then I dabble with some other 90s Hall of Fame running backs and wide receivers within those sets as well. And then my sort of like personal attachment PC is Michael Porter Jr. The attachment there, everybody loves sticker autos, right? That's what I heard. So the attachment there is I actually coached Michael in high school for a couple years. So I've known him since he was like 15. So that kind of led me into collecting him as a pro and then following the Nuggets religiously since he entered the league. And then that kind of led to my appreciation of Nikola Jokic, who I have some Jokic cards, but this card kind of marries my Jokic and MPJ collection with the dual on-card auto there from MPJ's rookie year.
Very nice. And what a great way to incorporate two of your player PCs into one card. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
No brainer on that one. Yeah. When I knew that one existed, I knew I had to have it.
Definitely. So you coached Michael Porter Jr. when he was 15 years old in high school basketball. Was he at that point in time, was it obvious that he was going to be an NBA player, or at least potentially?
It was. So it was kind of a wild story. It was my first year of coaching at all. And I didn't know I wanted to coach. I knew I wanted to see if I wanted to coach, and the opportunity presented itself. I'm actually best friends with the head coach at that high school. So that's how that opportunity presented itself. He brought me in as an assistant, and that would have been Michael's sophomore year. So, he's 15, and I remember walking into the first open gym, and it's like 30 minutes before open gym, so it's not even practice; it's off season. Just you come and play pickup, and he's the only one there, and just going through like drills by himself at a side court, just drilling every shot he takes. He's 6'10" at that time. He's a sophomore in high school. He's 6'10", but plays like a guard and can shoot better than anybody I've ever seen. So it really was you never really know at that age. You think he's so much better than everybody else. Why couldn't he be a pro? But so many things can happen. But man, it was at that time he also was a top 3 player in the nation at that time, and eventually he would become the number 1 player in that class, which was a pretty loaded NBA draft class, but a pretty loaded high school class as well. So
yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. And his brother was a freshman at that time, Jonte, who's also 6'11", did end up playing with the Grizzlies. He tore his ACL twice at Mizzou. So he's battled the injuries, but he actually ended up making it to the NBA as well. He's currently not rostered, but that could change. So had the opportunity to coach both of them for a few years.
No, that's pretty neat, man. Very, very cool. Really cool. Yeah. And as M Chem said, and I put it out there, Mikey says, great reason to PC a player. Yeah, for sure. That's a personal connection. Those are the best reasons.
And let me tell you, if this card, if I bought this as an investment, it would have been the worst investment of my life because it is worth way less than what I paid for it. But I never cared at the time. I wanted to get the best card I could get of a player I had a personal connection with. That's all it was about.
So before I go on to my next question, I wanted to say that the cards you did show, like the Essential Credentials, Jerry Rice, and the Future. I love those cards, man. Those are beautiful. I have the first one you showed with the sparkly outline, the sparkly border. I have an Emmitt Smith raw copy of that card out of 100. Really cool card.
I have an Emmitt as well.
Do you?
Yeah, I have a Marshall.
When you said your Jerry Rice was number 42 of 100, I thought, is that what number my Emmitt Smith is? Because
wow, that would be crazy.
We'd have to trade just so you could put the 2 serial numbers together, right?
Yeah, no, you should let me know on that. That would be cool.
I'll have a look. So my next question for you is going to be, do you look at your collection as an investment? And you've touched on this a couple times already tonight through our conversation, but just, maybe take us through the evolution of your thoughts on that as far as your collection goes. When you were younger, it's a collection, then maybe it becomes an investment, then maybe it goes back to being a collection. And then if you can weave in also the fact that you cannot buy cards from PWCC moving forward, and how that impacts your buying activity.
Yeah,
a double barrel there for you, if you don't mind.
That last bit about not buying on PWCC was probably the hardest part of that decision. Was am I okay with not being able to buy cards from PWCC? And, ultimately the other things outweighed it. I see that stat there from Joe, man. So real quick, while he's on that, 22 postseason touchdowns, that's incredible. 200 plus in the regular season. Jerry Rice also. So when I read that, I initially thought it was he was talking about the 22 or 23 touchdown season, which was the NFL strike season, and it was like only like 12 games, and Jerry Rice had 23 touchdowns in those 12 games. But anyways, yes, records galore for Jerry Rice. Yeah, so my evolution on the thought process of investing versus collecting, I really have evolved in that thought process. Like when I came back in, it really, to be honest, what re-attracted me was that there was opportunities to make money in cards now. I didn't know that was a thing. So that is, learning that was what brought me back into re-exploring the hobby. And that's what started this whole thing, was making money on the side, but it was providing extra income for me, but it was also like fueling my collection at the same time. So when I decided to go full time in this, it had to be about money to a certain extent. I had to be buying cards to make money on, at least to support my family at that time. I thought that's what I was going to do was, whether that was being a dealer or whatever that looked like. But when the consignment opportunities sort of presented themselves, and I thought there was a chance there to build a stable income, I took that, and, having a reliable income from that allowed me to evolve into more of a collector, because there was less pressure on me to make money on all of my cards, because I had income. So now that I'm in that space, I've just evolved into more and more of a collector. But I do, the thing is, I think the most collectible cards, like when you approach as a collector and you're going after collectible segments and collectible players and collectible and significant cards, like, they're good investments. They naturally interweave, whether you're approaching it as an investor or as a collector. There's investment opportunity within that. So I think it's like, what led me to Jerry Rice was he was my favorite football player growing up. And I felt like, for one, I loved his card. So it's funny because I'm an MJ guy too. And MJ, his rookie card, 1986. Jerry Rice rookie card, 1986. You can be an MJ collector kind of by collecting Jerry Rice for 1/100th of the price. Like that's how I approached it. Is I can have all these awesome MJ cards that I love the look of and the importance of, but can't afford, and I can just buy the Jerry Rice versions of those cards. And then, that kind of leads you down to other rabbit holes within those segments. But, I don't know if that was too long of an answer, but that's what got me here.
I did that exact thing that you're talking about with the a cut above. I wanted the MJ. It was very expensive. I ended up picking up a Shaquille, but I also picked up a Jerry Rice. So I have a nice Jerry Rice. It's in a BGS 9 holder of the cut above. So, and I think I mentioned I picked up the Intimidation Nation from I think that came from Chrissy Buckets off of Instagram.
Yeah.
Who I just spotted it in a post, and so I can totally get behind Jerry Rice, definitely.
Yeah, no, and he's been fun, and it's like, there's just so many reasons to collect him. But then when you look at the significance of Jerry Rice, like he's miles ahead of everybody in the wide receiver record books, and it's hard to imagine, that stuff changing. And when I watch these current guys and I get excited about them, it just makes me appreciate Jerry Rice even more. So it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, right on, man. Right on. Well, thanks for sharing that. Are we going to see you at the National next month?
I'm hoping to. I'm really hoping to. So my wife is about 7 months pregnant now. Picking your opportunities to get away is tough. But that's at the top of the list. I need to get out to Oregon as well, to meet everybody there at PWCC. I've been doing things remotely right now. So, I'm leaning towards getting there. Very hopeful to get there, and should know in the next week or two or not. Are you going to be there? I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm booked. I'm
Yeah.
booked to be there. So yeah, gonna go to New York for a few days early with my wife. She's gonna fly back home on I think the Tuesday, and I'm gonna make my way to Atlantic City
Yeah.
for the next 5 days.
Yeah, I don't want to miss it. And if I get there, like I'm gonna get a hold of everybody in my contacts and just meet as many people as I can.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll put some on Instagram. I'll keep tabs on you, so I just at least
Yeah.
know to look for you and make sure that we can shake hands and meet in person, especially after doing this episode together. I just want to call Skeppy put a question out here. I mean, you've only been a salesperson for 9 days, so unless there's something you want to address this with, we can just kind of leave it for now.
Oh, I think that's a good question. I think the challenges will also evolve, sort of like my collecting journey. But the quick, easy answer is, being collector focused and being a salesperson don't always align. So navigating how to do both in where all sides win has probably been the biggest challenge, but I think it's completely doable. I've already done it in that private sale to where, all parties were happy, card got into the hands of a collector, and, it's a win for everybody. So far that's been the biggest challenge, but also sort of excites me the most as well.
All right. Well, listen, I think we're good here. We're just over an hour. It's a nice light version of Sports Cards Live for a Wednesday. Unless there's anything else you'd like to talk about, anything going on in the hobby that's interesting to you lately that you want to raise and just have a quick chat about, I'm open to it. If not, we can wrap it up. And while you think about that, Nic, I'll just let everybody know, check out the ticker. If you are not yet following Nic on Instagram, what are you doing? But you can now start at the Wharf Sports Cards. I'll shout out Pristine Auction and Center Stage app, channel sponsors, appreciate them. And if you are not yet a registered user of Pristine Auction on the ticker right now, use code SCL when you register for $10 off your first purchase or order. And of course, Center Stage app, doing great things in the hobby and constantly improving their photo recognition. So be sure to download the Center Stage app in the Apple iStore. And Troy, well, a couple of thank yous coming in. Troy says, thanks for sharing your story, Nic. Skeppy says, thanks for the replies. Great short show. Shorter than usual, but this is how things evolve, Nic. You do one of these, you realize, oh, maybe I should start a short
Kind of
show
nice.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Crypto says, thanks to you as well, Nic. Thank you guys for thanking him. And thank you. Listen, not a ton of chat activity tonight. Maybe because people aren't expecting Sports Cards Live on a Wednesday, but I will say that the questions and comments have been among the highest quality I've seen, just pound for pound. So thank you, everybody, for that. Joe says, appreciate the show, guys. Nicely done. Hit that like button. Thank you, as always, Joe. Thank you, J-Back. Appreciate that. You good, Nic, or anything else you want to touch on?
No, I'm good, man. I think, we talked about a lot of fun things. Thank you for letting me share my story. I think it's cool to be able to share that stuff and get to know people on a deeper level. So I appreciate that. And, follow my Instagram page. I want to put out more content on my page, just highlighting different things I see in the community and opportunities. And, if you guys need anything at PWCC, all my information is posted on my Instagram page. My cell phone is there. My email is there. Don't hesitate to reach out if you guys need anything with PWCC. All
right. Appreciate that. I'll let everybody know this Saturday on the show on Sports Cards Live, Nate Ballant, also known as on Instagram as In Cardboard Veritas, will be joining the show. And I also want to let you know that episode 5 of the tag grading reveal series is going to occur on July the 9th. So that's it for now. Thank you, Mikey. Appreciate that. Thank you, Eric Stefano. Good to see you. And with that, this episode is over. Nic, you hang tight one moment. Everybody else, have a great week ahead. We'll see you next Saturday.